Hello, you're back with the single malt review. Dave and Tim here. Now, after our recent forays into all kinds of other places and spirits, we're back in Scotland for another single malt. In fact, it's Speyside.
Yes, it is, and a whisky fairly dear to my heart, as it's one of the very few that I've had. Well, I've been in the vicinity of it, at least. I haven't actually been inside. I was there in the wrong time of year, but never mind. It's Tomintoul, and as I do a rather dangerous reach across the table here, because it's another mini. Oh, poof. It's one of, you could almost call it one of the Forgotten Drams, not because it's not produced, not because it's not available, just because it's kind of obscure. I'll show you this bottle, and to a lot of people that will look fairly indistinct, because not many people have really seen this, because it's in such poor circulation. It's one of these sleepy little distilleries, which just sort of quietly chuffs along, produces what it produces, and never really made has never made, I should say, any big pushes into marketing or branding. It just sort of does what it does.
I've personally never noticed an absence of Tomintoul on the shelves, but at the same time, they've never been kind of shelf-occupying overabundance.
It's a little bit like, maybe shares a little bit of the same space as the Anok we recently reviewed. A whisky that's sort of always been there, but has never been there to any great fanfare, so it's just present, but not ever particularly obvious. On the distillery itself, the Tomintoul distillery, sort of right smack in Speyside, funny enough, just outside of Tomintoul itself, which is a lovely wee town if you're ever in the area. I stayed there for a few days just last winter, and it's a beautiful place. It's owned by Angus Dundee, which is one of the very, very few small distilling companies that still are in Scotland. They also own the Glencadam distillery, which is another sort of a sleeper brand in there. You can buy it, but you'd have to ask for it, kind of thing.
There are some really good independently bottled Glencadams out there.
Tomintoul and Glencadam both are one of the ones that are not shy about showing up in independent bottles, so that's a really good place to enjoy them, actually. However, I'm sure there's not going to be anything with wrong with their standard range. It's a modern distillery. It was founded in 1964, so considering when a great many of the more traditional ones were founded, that's pretty flash in terms of modernity there. So really probably one of the fewer modern distilleries out there. What that means functionally, I'm not sure. As I said, I wasn't able to go inside, so who knows what space age sort of things they've got in there.
Now, the label proudly proclaims the location as being Speyside Glenlivet.
Well, it's probably got more claim to that than a lot of the sort of the Glenlivet-alikes that is a very traditional, less seen these days. Everything used to be of Glenlivet, but the Tomintoul distillery is very, very much in the Glen of Livet. It's one of the well, it's not quite across the road, but it's down the road and around a few corners. It's very, very much in the same area as Glenlivet.
No actual association to Glenlivet whisky, but to the Glenlivet location, the Glen itself.
Very, very close by.
No, it's a 16-year-old, bottled at 40%, so we're assuming chill filtered.
I think very likely chill filtered, and but possibly not coloured, because for a 16-year-old whisky, this is, if it has been coloured, it's been done so with great restraint.
Yeah,
because that's
pretty pale.
Very
it's
pale.
Edging toward the bourbon end of the colour spectrum of something this age.
So I'll be able to actually discern something from that and say this is fairly well bourbon-dominant whisky. Or if there is a portion of sherry in here, which I'm sure there's a little bit, quite possibly from second and third fills. And that's the impression I'm getting as I just have a first cheeky nose here.
Ooh,
there is quite a bit of heavy sherry character here, but it's not new sherry.
That's a distinct
it's
prickle
old
for something
sherry.
at this age and at this strength.
It's quite lively and it's quite interesting. I'm glad you were able to find this. Or actually, no, this I sent from Scotland, didn't I? So this is by way of me, very many months ago, via the postage service. So
I'm getting the weirdest nose off this. The overall impression you get is a fresh, warm, and very seedy loaf of dark bread. That springs me to mind. A bread that's laden with sunflower seeds and other moist, malty goodies. That's what I'm smelling.
Not 100% with you on the bread, but I'm absolutely with you on this is a very peculiar nose. It's one of the more peculiar ones I've ever encountered. It's
sunflower seeds, that's sticking right in my
very,
mind
very
now.
lively, very, very... There is, as you say, quite a hell of a prickle for a 40% whiskey. The spirit is very, very keen in here, is what I call it. And certainly sunflower seeds, but maybe, for me, less bread and more of a... quite a thorny, herbaceous character, like a sort of a cut stem, almost a green character, like an aggressively herbaceous character.
I'm honestly not getting any of that, but that's good. There's different things for different people. So.
To approach it more scientifically, it is very, very phenolic whiskey. Hugely phenolic whiskey. So this already is turning into a really fascinating exercise. Let's see what's on the palate.
Oh, it's a lot of buttery and sherry flavours coming through. First up, again with some warm, buttered, grainy bread.
It's a little more gentle on the palate. It's still quite a fiery dram, I'd say. A lot of life in there, but it is a little more buttery there. A little smoother. There's a lot of maltiness in there. A lot of less Speyside character than I expected, actually. The fruitiness is not at all dominant, even on the palate.
There's hints of timber coming through. There's definitely a bit of some sherry. There's a touch of the oakiness, but not so much of the straight-up vanilla that you'd expect from bourbon.
This brings me very much to mind of old sherry butts. I think there is quite a great prevalence of, was I to make a guess, second and third fill sherry casks in here. It has that very, very spirit-driven, very, very gently wood-influenced tenor of that kind of whiskey. It's somewhat difficult to describe because it's more an absence of expected flavours than a presence of anything else, because what you are, with the reduction of active wood, you're never left with quite the same thing, because what comes out in its stead is distillery character, and that's what I think we're getting an awful lot of
This
in
is
this
a
case.
genuinely unique and slightly beguiling, bordering on confusing set of flavours. And I like that.
And that aggressively, not quite green, but aggressively planty flavour I'm still getting.
I'm getting a little more dried fruit on the nose now, for the addition of a little water. There's a little bit of more classically Speyside character starting to emerge.
There's almost... No, I just had a flash of... There's a very strong flavour in here that is just struggling to get out, and I think... There it is. It is black currant leaf. That is the herbal quality I was smelling. Crushed black currant leaf. If you're familiar with it, you'll know exactly what I mean immediately. It's one of the really, really striking smells that nature has to offer, because it smells like almost nothing else. Really only just one thing, which is crushed wild blackberry leaf, which is a very, very similarly... it's a very related plant. Anyone who goes for sort of... walks in the hills at a certain time of year will be very, very intimately aware of the particular smell, especially if you're prone to sort of thrashing your way through it and damaging the plant. It's a very, very distinct smell, and it's not first and foremost here, but that sharp herbal quality, that's exactly what I'm smelling. You will get it in a number of drinks, actually. It's quite a typical nosing quality to a good... Bordeaux wine, like a Cabernet or Cabernet Franc, will give you that same black currant leaf kind of a thing. But yeah, it's a thing that once you know it, you really, really won't forget it. Go and squash a blackberry leaf or a black currant leaf, and you'll know exactly
I'll
what I mean.
now, see if it brings me right back to Tomintoul. There's a little bit of water, even though it's already a 40% whiskey. Take it down slightly further with some fresh water, and that's bringing out more Speyside characters for me. There is some more sort of dry sherry flavours, some less sweet, fruity notes, and a little bit of sweet stuff too. A hint of pineapple.
Scoring this is going to be a little bit difficult for me. I'm going to be torn between sort of two camps here. On the one hand, this is a really fascinating whiskey, which I really, really enjoy. It's a really interesting and it's a really different whiskey, which are two things I'm very, very much drawn to. But I think in being as interesting and as striking as it is, it's not particularly... It's far from a welcoming whiskey, and it's not what you'd call particularly Moorish. I certainly would be... I wouldn't really want a glass of this immediately after it. You know, it's something I'd want to maybe warm my taste buds up with, but I wouldn't really want to sit and drink it over an evening. It doesn't have a lot of... It's not the friendliest, that's for sure, not for me. I think, scores-wise, I'd probably give this one a 79, with the caveat that if you really like a stunningly quirky whiskey, which I really do, especially if you can get them in a smaller size like that, then this one is truly, truly fascinating if you're into that sort of thing. But I don't think it has the legs to give it a stronger score. So it's a 79 for me. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you that it's a fascinating whiskey with a unique and beguiling character of its own. But I think that stands it in better stead. This is, for me, it's complex, it's deep, and it's got that unique flavour is really nuanced. I stand by my first impressions, which are of a heavy, seedy, nutty buttered bread. I think like a heavy German loaf or something. And I like that. It's entirely Moorish, it's entirely its own thing, and it rates for me an 86.
So it's quite a compelling whiskey either way you look at it. It's very, very different stuff. What it really does make me want to do is go and try a lot more Tomintoul to see if this one is an outlier or whether there is a distillery character to be found in there, which is equally as fascinating. I'll have to do a little bit of liquid research and find out. But anyway, we will see what else we've got for you in the meantime. And as usual, stay safe in the new year, and we will be right back with something else. Sludger.